Good afternoon, and welcome to Orpington Baptist Church. It's me and Martin, as always. It's lovely to be with you. And we've got a really special and important broadcast to do today, haven't we, Martin?
Yes, indeed. Friends may know, others may not. October is Black History Month, and as a church, we want to celebrate Black History Month. And we have two of our dear members from within the church with us, very special friends, Remy Adesina and Rachel Gleendumbrell. And we welcome you today, Rachel and Remy. It's great to see you.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us. Can one or both of you tell us, why Black History Month? Why is it important to celebrate and to have as a society? It's not specifically a Christian thing, though many churches will want to support it, I'm sure.
I don't mind going first.
Yeah, thanks, Rach.
So for me, I think it's important because it's about education. And I think generally I grew up in the UK. I was born in London. When you're at school, you learn about various kind of epic events in history. And with regards to kind of what's, termed Black history, we learn about civil rights and we learn about slavery, which I think very much kind of perpetuates a bit of a victim narrative for Black people, when actually there is a whole history that we're a part of that precedes slavery and has continued post-slavery, but it doesn't really get talked about. So I think it's about education, really, of the kind of contributions of various Black individuals alongside the rest of the world, and kind of bringing us into one narrative. Should it be a month? Probably not. But we have to start somewhere to kind of get the balance right. So that's why I think it's important.
Mm.
And Remy, would
Absolutely.
you take that forwards with how you feel?
Yeah, so I completely agree with Rachel. It fundamentally is about education. I, like Rachel, also feel that should it be a month? Absolutely not. But I think it's really an important step in correcting some of the whitewashes in history that have airbrushed Black achievement out of it, and creating that knowledge that allows people to know that Black people aren't an afterthought in society or a side group in society, but actually historically have been integrated in society and contributed over the centuries. So I think it's an important thing to do. I think, should Black history be all year round? Absolutely, just the same way as all other history is. But it's an important step to try and correct some of the inaccuracies that we've seen in history.
Mm.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. As a church, we want to celebrate Black History Month, but we want to learn lessons all the way through the year. Can you help us with some of those lessons that we kind of need to be learning? Sometimes it's not a question of being racist or not being racist. Sometimes it's a question of kind of unconscious biases, isn't it?
Absolutely. So as soon as you say the word racism, people back away from the table. Yeah. As soon as you say the word racist, people bristle. I'm not a racist. Yeah. But actually, if we think about where racism has come from, yes, there are the evil intents behind some of it, but a lot of people have just internalized what society has taught them. And so even without realizing it, we're constantly making judgments about one another and about things. So, and there are a number of images that have been used to challenge our thinking about that. What I would say to you is, when you see a Black person and you have a thought, whatever that initial thought is, ask yourself why that is your thought and validate it. Would that be the same if I had have seen a white person? Almost in the same way, look, we all have to have it. Almost in the same way as if I was walking home at night from a station, it was dark and there was a man walking behind me, I would have my wits around me. I would be conscious of my environment, because we have to have the instinct in order to be able to protect ourselves. But when you look at a young Black boy and think he can't be up to any good, ask yourself why you think that. Why is that the first thought that comes into your mind? When a Black person is stopped in a supermarket, which often happens, ask yourself, are you thinking this is just a security guard doing their job, or, oh no, they're up to no good again? Because it's constant for us as Black people. It's a constant thing. It's an everyday thing, followed around the shop, asked questions, inappropriate questions. Some of it is intentional. Some of it is just microaggression. And some of it actually just comes from not knowing any better, internalizing the narrative that society has sold us.
I mean, what I'd add to that.
Yes, thank you, Rachel. Yeah.
I think this is why, going back to the education, it's so important that as young people, young Black people, white people, Asian people, that we all have a broader view of what it means to be Black. Black History Month isn't just for Black people. It's for everybody to engage with, so that when those young non-Black people grow up, they don't have these internalized things that they've learned. You know, Black people, you know, slaves, victims. You know, we're only kind of in the news when something bad is happening. We're not maybe celebrated as much as we should be. And so Black History Month is about celebrating the many achievements that Black people have made alongside everyone else. And I think, you know, success, when we get there, I don't know, but success looks like, you know, a history lesson where you have diversity in the history lesson, where, you know, I guess young people knowing that Black people were in England long before Windrush. We've been here for centuries. We've been around the world for centuries. We've been involved in all those kind of epic events that we learn about, from wars to various things. We've been there, but we've often not been spoken about or mentioned. Our inventions haven't been credited. And it's funny how I think for Black History Month, all this information comes out. So what that tells me is that the information was always there. It's not been put in the spotlight. And so we rely on October to bring some of this information to the spotlight. But for me, it's really, the education is one way that we can kind of solve a lot of the issues that we have with racism, if we're saying that the root of it is lack of understanding, or you know, these conscious biases which people learn. Like, if that's what it's about, then the solution is surely education.
Yeah. And speaking of education, I know you both have boys in different tiers of education, from lower in secondary school to upper and in university. What's their feelings behind this in terms of their education input at school and their experiences as well? Sort of especially in the last 18 months, really, in the wake of the tragedy of George Floyd, that was 18 months ago now. What's their opinion of it? I'm assuming you've spoke with them about it. Right.
Yeah. So sorry, Remy. So for my son Miles, he's at secondary school. So he kind of went through the transition of year 6 into secondary school. And again, around Black History Month, there was always a bit of a swarm of activity around, you know, notable Black people in history. So that was always, you know, reasonably good. Was it all year round? No, but it happened, you know, at least once a year. I'd say in the last 18 months, that's ramped up massively at his secondary school, with there being more of an effort to not even just in terms of history lessons, but even in terms of like the books that the kids are reading, you know, them being authors from a range of backgrounds, not just kind of white, middle class, you know, typical authors, but Asian authors, Black authors, really trying to have diversity in terms of where the material and the perspectives are coming from. And I actually read yesterday that for some parts of the national curriculum, you can go through education from preschool to degree level and never encounter one Black author. So what that tells me is that Miles's experience at the moment, he's having a good one, and that has definitely improved and ramped up in the last 18 months. Is that the experience kids are having across the UK? I don't think so. But Remy, what was your experience with your children?
I think it's a little bit trickier for me because I grew up in Nigeria, and so I have a very strong sense of self, and I assumed that my children would also have that strong sense of self and of culture and tradition and all of those sorts of things. But their experience is different from mine. And many kids like them who have parents who have grown up in Africa, in the Caribbean islands, who don't have the same upbringing as they are having and don't have the same experience. So we automatically assume that they have the same richness of identity. And for the most part, they start out that way. But when they don't see it in school, they are probably more wise to it and to challenge it. And so my boys have gone from, it's very interesting. So from primary school to secondary school, even the profile of the boys' secondary school had changed by the time my younger boy went to the school. But my younger son got to secondary school and said, it feels good not to be ever such a minority. And that in itself is something. In terms of what they've done over the last few years, what we're seeing more of in schools is allyship. So teachers are more aware. Kids of all races are more aware and therefore more sensitive. In terms of curriculum, I think more still needs to be done outside of, as Rachel says, this Black History Month. But it also looking at things, I mean, there was talk about how many Black professors there are across the country and how many, you know, so a lot of things are being challenged. It's just their ability to see role models in the teaching staff, in the lecturing staff, and all of that is still quite limited. And there's still so much work to be done, but so much has been done in the last 18 months. That's
good news. That's about society. What about, because you're both committed Christians, very active in the church, and what about the churches? Because the churches, you know, have the theology that all people are created equal in the image of God, that Jesus Christ breaks down barriers, that there is no distinction between Jew and Greek and male and female and so on. So it has that theology. But how have you found in your experience the churches responding to a multicultural, multi-ethnic society? Bit of a sensitive question, really, because but I'm sure we can explore it.
Rachel, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I was going to say, obviously, initially I can comment on OBC because it's the church we go to, and there's an analogy about houses. So having a neighbour, they have the same house as you, their house is on fire. When their house is on fire, rightly so, the whole neighbourhood, including you, goes to put this fire out. No one's rushing to you to put the fire out and saying, oh my gosh, why are we giving this burning house all this attention? You just give the burning house the attention because it's the right thing to do when someone's house is burning in your neighbourhood. And I think that analogy is is likened to this, issue of kind of Black History Month, Black Lives Matter, kind of that general talk about race. And the way the kind of house analogy relates, and I'll get to the church in a second, is quite simply that, if you are my white neighbor and my house is burning down with racism and microaggressions and everything else that unfortunately Black people still have to deal with, it's about you helping me and basically putting out that fire and restoring balance and restoring peace and harmony, which actually benefits all of us. So for me, where the church comes in is it feels like, from a local perspective anyway, like you guys are helping us put this fire out, whether it's by having a broadcast like this so we can talk about issues that, some of our fellow congregation might not be comfortable talking about around the dining table, but are happy to kind of sit and watch on YouTube and Facebook Live. Like, by allowing this conversation to happen and being open and willing to it, like the church in that way helps to fan the flames of this fire of racism and hopefully eventually kind of put it out. And I think there are lots of positive stories about when there have been things happening, such as the football and the fallout from the final. Like there was lots of aggression and hate and lots to be really sad and disheartened by, and I was, but there were also those moments of kindness, people trying to protect the Marcus Rashford mural and what have you. And for me, that's where Christianity comes in. Christianity comes in to kind of remind those, whether you're Black or white Christian, whoever you are, just because we're God's children and we love each other and we care, like the role of the church and the role of Christianity is to put the fires out, whether it's racism, whether it's sexism, whether it's ageism. I feel like the church's role in all of these battles is to put the fires out. And I think OBC is on the right path in terms of trying to help with that. There's always more that we can do. I find it harder to comment on the broader church because, to be honest, I don't know that I see enough of kind of, I'd say, key members of the church organization really kind of detesting racism. I feel like when things happen, everyone's got something to say, but when it's just a random Tuesday in February, no one's saying anything, but I'm still being followed around Tesco's. Like, I think that's kind of, it's about doing more, but kind of knowing what more can be done, really.
Remy?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with what Rachel says. Small church, I think, i.e. OBC, we're doing a lot, and this is one of those things that we do to give platform, to create education, to open the dialogue. And I really do have to say that when people feel uncomfortable about having this conversation, that's a good starting point. Ask yourself why you feel uncomfortable. Why do you feel uncomfortable? Because that's what you have to challenge. And you have to be honest with yourself about that. Feeling uncomfortable suggests that there's either some unresolved feelings that you have either about yourself or about people around you that you haven't yet addressed. So I would ask people to do that. I think OBC prides itself on being an international church, and it absolutely is. I think we have to go beyond the aesthetic of that and start to dig underneath the surface a little bit so that we don't become complacent and challenge some of our thinking. When we look at something, does that actually look right? And ask ourselves why it is the way it is. What is it that we're doing here that we could be doing differently? As with everything, I happen to be privileged to be a member of the leadership team. We challenge ourselves, we ask ourselves questions about things. And race is just another one of those places where we have to challenge ourselves. We have to ask the questions. We have to be honest. Some of it's uncomfortable, but that's the reality. Now, big church, unfortunately, big church is no different from wider society. Whatever we see in church is a microcosm of what's happening in the wider world. And so the church at large has been involved in sexism and gender bias and also racism and all of those things along the way. I think it's small church, individual churches challenging themselves to be better and do better that will make big church improve. That's what makes a change in big church. And I think this separation of state and church sometimes muddies the waters, because it really is almost something that we say when it's convenient, because there hasn't really been separation of church and state. Many lines have been crossed on many subjects. So it's just understanding. We've just got to be more honest with one another and ask ourselves, what would Jesus do? And
Amen.
we are really all God's children. So it's not a case of me allowing you to be in my space. It's recognizing that this is your space too. You're not accommodating me. I belong here too.
Yeah.
One of our members, Janice Cotton, was showing me that she'd been to Chester Cathedral recently, and they've got a celebration of black art at the moment. And it was making the point, and it was, for some people, it was almost shocking that Jesus wasn't a white man. and some of the art was reflecting that, which I thought was really helpful, actually, from a point of view of art being a communication and a challenge to our thinking.
Yeah. Do you think? I'm sure I know what the answer is going to be. In the last 18 months, in the wake of George Floyd, when the whole world was almost woke up to this awful tragedy that's going on, not just there, but in so many places, has it changed? Are we learning as a society? I know Rachel touched on the Euros and the awful racism that happened on the wake of Rashford, Saka and Sancho missing penalties, but are we learning, or are we just not getting it?
I think we are learning. I mean, I think of it this way, like I am my ancestors' wildest dream. Once upon a time, in fact, not even that long ago, like my mum's grandma, like lived on a plantation. Her parent was a slave. So in that context, like me in London, homeowner, educated, I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. And there are a lot of Black people who had to make some sacrifices for me to be here, who had to be vocal and fight. But there were a lot of non-Black people right beside them being allied to help them get out of their situation. A lot of Christians as well who helped them. So me sitting here having this conversation with you, I am somebody's answered prayer from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And I think that is progress. But we don't stop here. It's progress, but it's not balance. And I think balance is what we're all trying to get to. So I'm praying for my great grandchildren so that they don't need to have a conversation about Black History Month, because I think the irony of it all is, as much as in this month we focus on Black individuals and their contributions in history, the reason why we're doing it is so that we can get some kind of balance, because we've been omitted from so many storylines, so many paths, so many conversations for so long. It's just about trying to restore balance. So have we come a long way in hundreds of years? Yes. In the last 18 months? Yes. Is there a way to go? Definitely. I think the Euros is an example of that. Like, we're not there yet, otherwise that would not have happened. And I think even the fact that there were some people who were watching that game, the boys didn't do what they wanted them to do, so it was like, right, we're gonna be vile. I think even that demonstrates an element of, dare I say, a kind of dictator mentality of like, well, Black people are still here only for your entertainment, and if we get it wrong, then we're punished. Like that is precisely what my ancestors were praying us away from. And whilst I'm not working in a field, there are still elements that are creating obstacles for me, creating obstacles for my parents. But Do I have the same obstacles as my Caribbean parents? No. Will Miles have the same obstacles as me? No. Like, that is progress. We just keep on going, but I still think we have come a long way.
I think Remy, I think we are about challenging principalities and powers, and just as we name sexual abuse as sin and as evil, we need to name as a church racism as sin and evil, and part of those principalities and powers that we want to see demolished.
Absolutely. And Martin, you have no idea how important it is to have a minister say that it is sin and it is evil and it is a stronghold that needs to be torn down. Impact of our words sometimes we do really need to be aware of, and sometimes people just need to hear that. Look, there are so many things that we've played nicely about and we make nice. The reality is the scourge of racism still exists. Otherwise, we wouldn't have seen what we saw with the Euro. We wouldn't have seen, we wouldn't be seeing the vitriol against Black people where it exists. We wouldn't, I don't know if anyone knows last Christmas about the Sainsbury's advert, and just the words that were coming out of human beings.
That was awful.
Just dreadful. And the truth of that is, and I talked about this at work, the truth of that is those internet online trolls are church ministers somewhere, CEOs somewhere, teachers somewhere. They're not, like we would like to think, some worm that crawled out of underneath a stone. No. They are people in our society, and they are people we are friends with, that we know, that we've left our children in care of, that we've trusted our elderly parents in care of. They are those people, and we just need to work harder at challenging it and calling it out. That I think that's really it.
Thank you so much, Remy and Rachel. It's part of the conversation. We were determined to have this and to say to anybody that's watching and listening, let this be part of the conversation here in this church, in other churches and other community groups. Let's not be afraid to have the conversation and to learn from one another, because even though you might find it a sensitive subject, let's have the conversation and let's learn, because that's the only way we're going to grow individually and as churches. Now Rachel has...
before we get there,
yes, sure.
Remy asked me to share a link.
Sure.
Remy, I've got that link. It's going to go out now on the screens for people that are watching on Facebook and YouTube. I haven't watched all of it. It's 15 minutes. But can you just explain why you wanted that shared?
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Yes, I think we talked about unconscious bias and how internalized views really colour what we then do and the actions we take and all of that. I saw this clip, it's a TED talk. I saw it and it really challenged me. And I'm a Black person and I'm a female. So I think that it's really a good one to challenge people's thinking. And I think the reason why I share the link, and I say this since last year, now up until this time, I've just always thought I won't speak up on racial matters because it's not for me to educate other people. If they want to know, that the information is there for them to learn. But I realized that if I'm calling for people to be allies, I need to be in my own game too. I can't be on the sidelines. So I need to get in the game. And one of the things I always say to people is go and pick a book that you've never read.
Right.
A Black culture or Black history book. Find something that you can learn, educate yourself. And this link is just another example of educating yourself.
Great.
I've recently read a book by Emma Dabiri, Don't Touch My Hair, an Irish Yoruba girl who writes about the story. And I think it's a really good book for people to read. I don't know her, so I'm not plugging her for a commission or anything like that, but there are a number of resources that people can access. And this link is just one example of how our biases pigeonhole people and decide how we then respond to them.
Brilliant. Well, that link is on people's screens in the comments section of both Facebook and YouTube, so please take some time out to read it. Let's watch it, sorry. And Rachel, you have written a poem, and we've read it. It's brilliant, and we thought it'd be a really good idea for this broadcast to be played out with you reading your poem. Are you able to do that for us?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Well, thank you both for joining us. Remy, thank you so much. Rachel, thank you. And we're going to play this out now. Rachel, it's over to you.
So it's entitled Black 24/7, Proud to Be Me. I'm so proud to be me. So why do I have to fight to be represented? Or fight because I'm represented as just one thing? Nobody can be strong and independent all the time. Sometimes I'm vulnerable, not just because of racism. Are you listening? Maybe I don't like chicken and I'm always punctual. Maybe I wear my hair in an afro just because I want to, not to make a statement. I'm not aggressive, but I will react to racial slurs and microaggressions. I am so much more than black though, but I am black 24/7. It's a shame history made my colour a thing. Every October, we negotiate for space to show the world we are so much more than the boxes we have been put in. Space that shouldn't be yours or theirs, but ours. You have a beautiful house, but my house has been burning for hundreds of years. Please help us put the fire out. We want to inhabit all the spaces that you are in, together, equal, and forever. No house is to be torched ever again. Black is just my skin, but your ancestors made it a thing. The lines and the boundaries are all man-made, so why can't we all just behave? Let's bend their rules and balance our worlds. I love being English and Caribbean. Who says I can't be both because of my skin? Represent me as both. Embrace me as your sister. Let's share and write new stories together. I'm just as English as you. It doesn't matter about my skin's hue. I'm not being aggressive. I'm just tired of begging. Let's level the playing field and then just play. I'm black 24/7 and that should be okay because I'm proud to be me.